Welcome back, everyone, to another Drunk Friend podcast. You know how this goes by now. My name's Travis, and I'm joined by Alex out in sunny Albuquerque. How are things going out in the desert?
They're sunny.
Yeah?
And they're pretty... we got, believe it or not, it actually snowed a couple days ago.
Wow.
I mean, granted, when it snows here in April, the snow does not stay on the ground. That's the nice thing about Albuquerque, is that on the rare occasion it does snow in the city, it will melt by like 11 a.m. So that's cool. But I'm not going out there shoveling. That's not what I moved out here for. Hell no. But things are good.
Is snow in Albuquerque a thing that happens, or is this signs of the end of the world?
Definitely not in April, for sure. That was weird. I think that was Monday. But no, it'll snow here in like January, February. I think it did this past December, like once. But it'll melt by the afternoon, and we won't have to worry about it. I mean, granted, this part of the country, you just... If it snows and it actually stays, and it's cold enough for it to stay accumulated on the ground, everything shuts down. The whole city, everything's closed. Work is canceled. Schools are closed. Because they just don't. I don't blame them for doing that, because they don't have the utilities to deal with it.
Right.
Because there's no salt trucks, there's no sand trucks, or any of that. Nobody has any way to fix the roads, so it's dangerous. And it's dangerous enough with how people drive out here. So,
yeah, the same is kind of true for where I'm from, because while being in the mountains, we're not like immune to snowfall, but a lot of the roads aren't great, and a lot of them are just off steep embankments, and it's just they're not safe when it's dry. So yeah, you could just see a picture of snow and people will freak out, and the whole town will everything kind of shuts down. But that's, that takes me back to school when we'd get those snow days. That meant more time for video games. Did you get snow days in Minneapolis or St. Paul?
No, they were very rare. The only time we got snow days were when like the school buses, it would be so cold that the school buses couldn't start.
Oh, wow.
I remember in 8th grade, this would have been 1995 for anybody out there listening that's from Twin Cities area, Minnesota. 1995, that was one of the coldest winters of my lifetime, and there was like a 3-day stretch where I think the warmest it got was like minus 15 or something like that. Jeez. It was crazy. Yeah, it was really bad, and yeah, the buses couldn't start, so we couldn't go to school. And what was frustrating was my school in particular, South St. Paul, was especially stubborn when it came to closing. Because they had like pride in being open, like, oh, we're not like Bloomington Jefferson, we're not like Roseville, we're gonna stay open, and that was so annoying.
We're the South St. Paul Rebels. I don't know if that was your mascot, but maybe it could have been.
Sadly, we were the Packers. I hated the fact that we were. Well, it made actually the name makes sense because South St. Paul is a meatpacking city. They had stockyards down by the highway. And it always smelled lovely down there, believe me.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Man. Well, interesting.
Brings me back.
What a tangent that was.
Speaking of going back.
I'm doing okay. I'm buried in a lot of work, so I'm just happy to do a podcast.
Yeah, I know, right? I am too. It's super fun we're finally settling into this work at home thing. I don't know about you, but we've got like our whole department online now. So
oh, wow.
Now we're really starting to. How about, is that the same case with you, or it takes a while for everybody to like kind of get caught up, and it's like, okay, now we can start working?
Yeah, it seems like things have settled down in such a way that now I'm being tasked with more things, so people are like, all right, I'm pretty comfortable with the home setup, now I can delegate everything. And it's kind of hitting me all at once. So life goes on. We'll see what happens. Hopefully everyone else out there is doing okay, and actually I shouldn't complain about having work right now. I think a lot of people wish they did. So yeah, true. There's that. But I do have a new mic. That's cool. I don't know if I sound better or worse. You can email us a kudos or a gripe at drunkfriendpodcast@gmail.com if you don't like it. But I think it's good. I like the mic setup. That's
a brilliant segue. That is a professional segue right there by a veteran podcaster.
Hey, well, you know. Speaking of that, though, I mean, so maybe this is an opportunity to check in. So you originally wanted to take a stab at podcasting because it was probably different than staring at video editing software, which we all imagine that you've done for the last 7 years exclusively. So what's this experience been like so far for you?
It's been interesting because I don't know. It's been a lot of things. It's been really cool and fun. The responses have been really positive, which is always really nice. And it's been super fun talking to you and talking to Daria and talking to Dan. But it's funny how you come across the reason you want to do something like well after the fact. It's like, oh, I get why I wanted to do this now. It's because my channel stuff is so structured. Like I've got it down to such a strict formula now that I'm kind of tired of it. And podcasting is like this open-ended conversation, or at least it can be. I know a lot of podcasts out there do like segments and stuff like that, but I don't want to do that. Like that's not what I want to do at all. Like this is just to like kind of just talk and have fun and just laugh. And it's been really cool for that. And I realize I have a lot to learn about podcasts and about like talking to people and stuff, not drinking too much. Realize I'm being, you know, because I'm not gonna lie. Everybody can tell on the Dan podcast I got pretty loaded, and it was pretty like I was pretty obnoxious towards the end. So, but I mean, it's called Drunk Friend. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have that excuse built into the name, so people's expectations coming in are that this is going to be a slop fest, and what we give them, I think, is a notch above that, and that's all. That's all we can do.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
Yeah.
How's it been for you?
Good, and I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it. For me, it's been great. I've had a lot of fun, and I actually do have a little bit of imposter syndrome. And I know anytime someone says that, you know, you always get talked out of it. No, it's fine, you belong, whatever. But like my YouTube experience and channel pale in comparison to not only yours, but certainly the two people we've interviewed so far. So my perspective there is a little bit limited. So in the back of my head, I'm always thinking like the people that are listening to this are always like, who is this guy and why?
Nah, you're fine. The people are eager to find out who this person is, and they're happy to find out who this person is. A lot of people have really been positive about Nest Friend and the channel and the podcast in general. So, I mean, I personally haven't heard anything.
No, I agree. It has been good. Folks have been very nice. Lots of kind comments, and a lot of people saying they found the YouTube channel because of the podcast. And so I'm very, very thankful for that. I will say, though, one good thing about podcasting is that there isn't a YouTube comment section. So so that's kind of a blessing.
There was even somebody that found our friend Coolor, who does our podcast intro.
Oh, really?
From the podcast, yeah. And I think that's awesome. I think that's so freaking cool.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I think one thing that I've found, too, and I always kind of knew just because I've had small-scale podcasts for a while, and promoting them has always been kind of rough because at first I was like, well, we'll do this podcast, we'll record it, it'll go out on Spotify and Apple and iTunes. And at that point, you're kind of separated from feedback. There's nothing there. And so we also would put them up on YouTube, but then like no one would ever listen to them or watch them there. And so I think there is a separation between a YouTube audience and a podcast audience. And I think that's something we're kind of finding out here with what we're doing.
I don't know. Is that something we should be doing? Should we be putting this podcast on YouTube? Or should we just put that out to the audience right now? Or like,
yeah, I don't know.
How should that work?
I think it would make more sense for us to do that than some other podcasts, just because I think obviously 98% of our audience is baked into YouTube.
Oh, sure.
Already.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They might not want it on your main feed.
Oh, yeah. I suppose, well, I would guess not. Yeah, they're probably already annoyed with me putting out reminders and stuff like that. Hey, here's a new podcast up. But, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should start a YouTube channel or something like that. Maybe people will leave a comment.
Oh, man, maybe.
Maybe we'll get some feedback for once from somebody somewhere at drunkfriendpodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. Okay, so we got all the plugs out of the way. We voiced, okay, we're happy with this podcast. We're comfortable doing it. We want more mean comments and more nice comments to feel like we're popular.
We want some ridiculously mean comments, like be comical, like in your like we want like Disney villain.
Oh yeah,
like ridiculousness here. Come on, step it up, people.
Absolutely, but something shareably nice. Don't go too far, or shareably mean rather.
Yeah.
So you and I had talked, and it's weird. You and I started a podcast with very little rapport prior. It was kind of like, I think we had talked on a podcast previously, and I had sent you some messages over Patreon. I was like, hey, do you mind if I rip you off for my own YouTube channel? And you were kind about that, but we had never really had a conversation that was, I don't know, kind of outside of being recorded.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so we
talked on Twitter a couple times. Least.
Yeah.
When that one time when Daria interrupted us,
as she is wont to do. But we were chatting. I guess we got tired of being like, hey, when can you record? Who do we want to get for this podcast? We were like, hey, man, do you like wrestling? And I was like, yeah, dude. I did in the 90s. And you're like, yeah, me too. And of course I knew you did because in your Discord you have a channel devoted to it. So I was like, yeah, this guy's in on that. And so I thought it'd be cool if we just maybe talked about some wrestling games from back in the day and maybe break into a little bit about memories with pro wrestling. I don't want to ostracize the audience. I know wrestling's not for everybody, so we'll try to keep it accessible. But what got you into the wild world of wrestling?
Well, as I said, I'm from Minnesota. And growing up in the 1980s, it was the territory days. Like nowadays, it's just like WWE, and then there's these smaller, much, much, much smaller offshoot productions of like AEW and whatever else. Whereas back in the day, back in the late 80s, when I started watching TV, mid 80s, late 80s, when I started watching TV, it was still the territory days of wrestling. So in Minnesota, it was the AWA. I think it was the American Wrestling Association, which was run by Vern Gagne. And his son, Greg Gagne, conveniently was the star. Or one of the stars, I should say.
Funny how that works in like every wrestling federation.
Oh, of course. It's a staple. Yeah. So, that was my first exposure to it, was the AWA. I remember seeing Kurt Hennig before he was Mr. Perfect.
Oh, wow.
I remember seeing Jerry Lawler was there for a little while. Back in the day when it was a territory, guys would kind of rotate, like they would take turns almost. It would be like, okay, I worked this territory, people are sick of me, and it's time for me to move to wherever else next.
Right.
That's kind of how it was. And there was this guy, the Trooper. I have no idea who this dude was, and I have no idea. I haven't even bothered to like research this now. It's just kind of one of those like things that's just kind of stuck in my brain. It was the Trooper in the AWA in like the late 80s in a cage match, getting the crap kicked out of him. I'm at my grandma's house, like watching TV. It's a Saturday, and it's like, yeah, that's wrestling to me.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's pro wrestling to me. The Trooper, a guy in a mask, getting the crap kicked out of him by like 5 guys in a cage. The crowd's booing. My grandma's not paying attention, and I'm watching on a crappy 13-inch TV. Yeah, that's pro wrestling right there.
And that's where it started for you, huh?
That's the very beginning. Yeah, I remember when I guess the start for me at WWF was on the school bus. Or I guess before that, it would have been when we first got cable, and I can pinpoint when we had to have gotten cable for the first time back in like January or February or March of 1990, because we had Cablevision at the time, and they had this channel. It was channel 60, and they had this channel that was nothing but previews of their pay-per-view movies and their pay-per-view events. And I remember it was like Razor Ruddock versus some other boxer guy, and then this movie, and then this Playboy special or whatever. And then it would be the WWF somehow would get like Mean Gene on there for like 3 straight minutes.
Wow.
To like hype the next event. And he sold the hell out of WrestleMania 6. It was champion versus champion, title for title, Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. And holy crap, I was like 100% in on this. I didn't care who won. I just wanted to see it, but I couldn't convince my parents to get it. So on the school bus, the day after the event happened, the morning after, this kid Tyler was the only kid that got the event, and he was telling everybody the results. People were just like shouting out matches, like,
wow,
who won Demolition Colossal Connection? He was like, Demolition won the title. It was crazy.
That's awesome.
And he was given details of the title match, and I would have been 1990. I would have been in 3rd grade. So I have a very clear memory of that. It was super cool. And I was absolutely sold. I was getting magazines after that. I was watching every week. I was doing everything. I was doing all the things. What about you? How did you start?
Yeah, my older cousin, who he's just a year older than me, but he was really, really into it from a really young age. And I don't really know how or why. I think it was because in our area, you talked about the AWA. In our little area, we had the Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which was actually ran by Jim Cornette.
Yes,
was it Mouth of the South? Is that what they call him?
No, that was Jimmy Hart.
That's right.
I can't remember what Jim Cornette's nickname was, but he had the tennis racket.
Yeah.
And
he's just loud and obnoxious. And he actually, I looked him up
yeah.
earlier. He still has a podcast where he just doesn't take a breath for an hour and a half. It's insane. But yeah. I remember him actually being at the shows, and what's really strange, and I've talked about this on a couple podcasts that we've done, or maybe the first or second one. My town was really, really tiny. I mean, not even the biggest town in the county. It's so small, but for some reason, we would get the Smoky Mountain Wrestling tour would stop by and perform at our high school. And so my cousin would tell his dad that, who would tell my dad that, and then I would tag along, not really knowing what I was going to. I was too young to really be talked into it. I didn't like wrestling, like, as described to me. Like, I just wasn't into it. But then when I got to see it, it was like this larger-than-life thing. It was, obviously I also got cotton candy, which helps the sell. But, and I remember seeing, like, the... what's it called? Like the Rock and Roll Express. I think those were my favorite.
Oh yeah, Ricky and Bobby.
Yeah, my favorite dudes, and of course Jim Cornette.
Was it Ricky? Oh wait, no, not Ricky and Bobby.
Ricky Bobby. Ricky Bobby.
I'm thinking Ricky Bobby.
I would just say
Ricky
yes to
Morton.
anything.
Ricky Morton. Ricky Morton, and I forget the other guy's name. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Bob Gibson. I think.
Robert Gibson. Yeah, that you got it. Yeah, I was kind of right.
Yeah,
almost Bobby.
I mean Ricky Bobby. You're right. I think that's right.
Ricky Bobby. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we're right. So yeah, like those guys, that was awesome, and seeing that in my town blew me away. Because this is like...
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Especially on a small town.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool. That had to have been like the biggest deal ever.
Oh, absolutely. It blew my mind that anything would come to my town and then for it to be that cool. Because those guys would also perform, and they would, I guess, air the tapings on Saturday mornings on like local television. So I could see those same guys on TV. And seeing it at that age, seeing someone that you'd seen in the flesh on TV was nuts. Like,
whoa,
it's like seeing, if you saw like the weatherman downtown, you'd be like, oh my God, that's the guy that's on TV every day. Like there's just something about that to a kid. So that actually hooked me a little bit, but I still didn't follow the big stuff yet. Like I just knew that sometimes downtown there was wrestling and Dad would take me to it. I could have been 6 or 7. So I didn't really get big picture wrestling, but my cousin, he helped facilitate the big stuff because he would get the magazines. And then he would just bring over pictures of dudes and be like, telling me who they were. And I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. So he kind of drug me into it because I think he wanted somebody to experience it with. And I was the next gullible kid, around that he could entrap. But man, I got hooked.
Yeah. What was your first WWF? Was it WWF or NWA or WCW?
It was actually WCW. It was Starrcade 93. And
you went to Starrcade 93?
I didn't go to it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was the first thing I'd ever seen. And that would be amazing if I just got to go to Starrcade out of the blue. But no, I was it was like a December 93, I think, and I wasn't told what was going on. My mom was like, your cousin and your aunt and uncle, they want you to, whatever, they want you to come over, and you're going to stay the night on a Sunday night, and we'll come get you in the morning when your dad goes to work. And I was like, what? The sleepover? Like, I didn't have a hand in the sleepover. I was kind of being coaxed into it. And I went, and my cousin was there. They made me nachos and cheese, and they sat me down. It's like they wanted me to be in the wrestling, They, like, sat me down in front of the TV and was like, listen, your cousin Charlie loves this, and he needs someone to love it with, and we're making you do this. And
what kind of cheese was it? Was it Velveeta?
It was Velveeta, but it had some spice to it, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, all right.
I was 8. I have a vivid memory of this night too. This was incredible.
That's awesome.
Because in the Smoky Mountain stuff, the drama, it didn't really hit me. Like, I didn't really. They got on the microphones and yelled at each other, but I didn't really care. But there's something about the WCW that felt serious. And the Starrcade '93 was when Ric Flair was going to wrestle Big Van Vader, and if he lost,
that's right,
he was out, I think.
He was going to retire if he lost.
Yeah. And the guy, like, in the match, it's like his teeth get knocked out, or at least they fake it to where you think that. And they have his family out there afterward, like they were dressed for his funeral. Like, it was serious, and it kind of scared me. Like, as a little kid, I was like, holy shit, man, this is nuts. I bought into all that, and I was hooked for probably the next 8 years.
8 years. So you suffered through the mid 90s then of WCW, WWF, all that. Did you watch both, or did you just watch one or the other, or did you stick with Smoky Mountain?
I think once I saw the big stuff, I saw that Smoky Mountain was Smoky Mountain.
Was small time.
Yeah. But it was cool.
Smoky Mountain stuff.
Like, within like a year, Jim Cornette was on like a WWF pay-per-view.
He was.
It's nuts.
Yeah, he was. He was Yokozuna's manager, I think. Yeah.
And I saw that was like, against Lex Luger, that whole thing, that was great. But yeah, I think for me, the games, and this is what we're trying to get to, the games helped keep me in it through that because we got a lot of Super Nintendo stuff, Sega Genesis stuff right there.
Oh, yeah. The wrestling video games, of course. This is a gaming podcast.
Yeah, and that's what kept me in it, honestly. I wasn't as into it as when I first started, or toward like the NWO WCW thing that really hooked me. But that mid 90s, between I guess 93 and 96 or so, I was pretty exclusively a WWF kid, and I think it was because of the games.
Oh, well, I don't blame. If I remember playing WrestleMania the arcade game as a kid, and I was kind of disappointed in it because it was so cartoony, but at the same time, the graphics were pretty freaking cool because it did the Mortal Kombat thing with the characters, where it was like, I forget the term. I always forget these terms. I'm so bad with them. The photorealistic thing.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like, I just call it the Donkey Kong thing. Whatever that was.
But yeah, it was, and it had the cartoonish aspect to it too, with where when you punched Bret Hart, you got a bunch of hearts out of him. You punched Razor Ramon, you got a bunch of razors and gold chains out of him. Right. And it was super, super goofy and weird. But I have a funny story about how I got into, or rather how I was, I stayed away from wrestling video games for a little while.
Okay.
So when I first got my Super Nintendo as a Christmas present, I shouldn't say it was ours, mother. I know she's listening somewhere. When we first got that Super Nintendo, we just had Mario World and Final Fight. And I think my dad ended up getting like one other game. I can't remember what it would have been. I think it was the first John Madden Football. But still, I was born in the spring. So the nice thing about Christmas is that I get to like plan my gift strategy. Okay. Like, okay, I got this for Christmas, so I can come around and get this for my birthday. So I got Mario World and Final Fight, and then I got Madden. I think it was Madden Football. So I can come around. I want to get WWF Super WrestleMania for my birthday. And I was so looking forward to it because I was so burnt out on Mario World. And I was playing it to death. I was playing Final Fight to death. I was so sick of these games. I was renting like Contra 3 and stuff like that, which was blowing my mind at the time. But
right.
I really wanted to like sink my teeth into a wrestling game because I was obsessed with wrestling at this point. So I got Super WrestleMania. And That game is awful.
Oh, it's not good. It's not good at all.
And every wrestler has the same moves, and like they all have the same elbow drops. They all have the same animations. The sprites are different. The only redeeming value in these games, or in this game rather, is the fact that each character's music is in it.
Oh, right, yeah.
You get to hear Sid Justice's music in 16-bit. You get to hear Hulk Hogan's music, or Macho Man, or Legion of Doom. That was cool. Here, like, I held my tape recorder in front of the TV speakers and put that music on a tape.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I wanted, that was like all the game was worth to me, because it was so, like, I got sick of that game within 10 minutes. And even when I tried to like do something with it, like, okay, I'm going to make my own pay-per-view. I'm going to have Undertaker versus Ted DiBiase. I'm going to have Legion of Doom versus Natural Disasters. I'm going to have Hulk Hogan versus Macho Man. You know, I'd use my imagination to like the best I could. Even then, it was like, oh my God, every guy does the same freaking thing.
Yeah, and close it out with a Survivor series that takes like 30 minutes to finish.
There's like 8 guys, and they all have the life bars, and they regenerate, and it's like, oh my God, like this is never going to end. Yeah, but when Royal Rumble came out,
oh man,
for Super Nintendo and for Sega Genesis, both versions, holy crap, that was a freaking quantum leap forward.
Yes.
Because then you've got finishers, you've got the game is like 10 times faster. You've got so many more moves. You can choke a guy.
Yeah.
You can
you can have all of the wrestlers in the ring at once. Like, it would do that.
Oh yeah, you could, the Royal Rumble mode, yeah, where it's everybody in the ring at once, and you can just throw them over the top rope. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
I loved that.
Yeah.
That was a game changer for me, big time. So, and then Raw was even better, but I didn't like the roster of wrestlers at the time, which is funny because when I did the video on wrestling games, which is like forever ago, holy crap, it would have been almost 4.5 years ago now, I think.
Jeez.
And I'm still getting comments about this, by the way. I said some derogatory comments about like not liking the Raw roster because it had 1, 2, 3 Kid and Bam Bam Bigelow, and people still send me comments like, how dare you, Bam Bam's a legend. And I'm like, I'm not saying he's garbage, I'm saying I didn't like him. Like, okay, like I didn't care for Bam Bam lost to Lawrence Taylor at WrestleMania 11, okay? Like, I didn't think that much of him.
I always thought that game was crazy because it had Luna Vachon in it.
Oh, yeah, she was the first woman
Yeah.
to be in a wrestling game.
Yeah.
And she was a badass,
Yeah.
for sure. She was Mad Dog Vachon's daughter. I mean, Mad Dog Vachon's Minnesota represent.
Wow, I didn't even know that. Yeah, okay.
And speaking of Minnesota represent, 1, 2, 3 Kid, that's Sean Waltman. He's from I forget which city he's from, but he's from Minnesota. And it's like, I didn't like the character 1, 2, 3 Kid. I thought he was lame as hell.
Right.
And I liked him much better as he progressed through his career.
Sure.
So, yeah, people still yell at me about that. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that was the thing though. I always thought it was strange that Doink kept being in games. I was really Doink, like he's not. Doink and Dink were fun to watch, but they weren't really that prevalent. They were very rarely in pay-per-views. They were kind of here and there. I think Doink was like 10 different wrestlers throughout the course of WWF. I wasn't upset about it, but looking back, it's like, was he really that popular to be in a video game? I guess.
No, I don't know. Was there that much of demand for Doink back in the day? Probably not.
I don't think so. But he was also in the arcade game too, I think. WrestleMania the arcade game.
He was, yeah. Back in the day, he was Matt Bourne. And then the guy that played him left.
Right.
Matt Bourne left, and then he got replaced by like some guy named Ray. I can't remember the last name. It's like 11 letters long. It starts with like a C, I think. Wrestling fans are yelling at me right now. His name is blah blah blah.
I actually looked it up the other day, and I don't remember. So I have the freshest information on Doink the Clown, and I still couldn't tell you.
You heard it here first, folks. The freshest information on Doink the Clown.
Ray Apollo.
I can't remember.
He went by Ray Apollo, but Ray Lickamelli. Like a melody.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Ray Lickamelli. How am I going to remember that?
I don't know.
Oh, that's funny. What was your first wrestling video game?
Actually, it was Royal Rumble. That was the first one.
That was the first one? You started off strong.
Yeah, definitely. I dipped into the other ones later. I didn't even have the NES ones, being the NES guy. My cousin, my older cousin, he would rent them, and then he would tell me they were ass and told me not to play them, and then I just believed him. And he was right. They're not great.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, I did a video on it. There's some that are better than others, but none that are really that outstanding. But Royal Rumble was the one that I sunk the most teeth into, and I think he had Raw, so I went over to his house and we would play that. And I remember that one being a little more arcadey than Royal Rumble. Like at least it would do the finishing moves were kind of, greater or bigger than life. They weren't truly represented. Like I think 1, 2, 3 Kid, he would like jump on all 4 turnbuckles and then do something. I can't remember exactly, but I remember that being kind of cool. But when it came to video games, I liked Royal Rumble enough, but I was really into sports games during that era. So I would watch wrestling, but I didn't really get into the games as much until I think the late 90s WCW NWO thing really got me wanting to put my own wrestler in the game and that kind of thing. So that's where it really took off for me there, yeah.
At that point, you had 5th generation consoles like that were putting out games like WCW Revenge, WWF No Mercy, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And those games were amazing, at the time.
Did you play a ton of those?
I did play. My game was WrestleMania 2000.
Okay.
I just kind of ended up with that. I really liked it at the time. I loved that you could go so far in depth with customizing your own moveset and doing all sorts of stuff. I'm sure, there's a whole subculture of wrestling fans that are obsessed with those games and that game engine.
Yeah.
That can like talk about it in way more in depth than either of us ever could. But I really liked WrestleMania 2000 back in the day, just like messing around with it. I had my own character and all that sort of stuff. And it's got a great roster because that was, it's got like Shane McMahon and all that.
Right.
It's got all the great characters from the late 90s. So I liked it a lot.
Yeah, in the late 90s, I was almost exclusively WCW. And it's largely because of the NWO. And I think I actually just stroke of luck got into it right before the NWO happened. So I got like that whole wave of, when WCW was just untouchable. And then when the WWF Attitude Era started up, I really was such a good kid. I thought it was too raunchy for me. And I was in high school too, but there was something about it. I'm like, nah, they're too sexy. I just can't. I want to stick to WCW.
You were into. By the way, we should preface that neither of us follow wrestling currently.
Right. No idea who's in there now.
I hear about names being tossed around. I know who Brock Lesnar is.
Sure.
Because he's from Minnesota. Mostly because he's from Minnesota. I love Brock. He's one of my all-time favorites. And I know who John Cena is and Daniel Bryan. I know who I don't know.
The Undertaker, he's still kicking around.
Oh, Undertaker, yeah. 89-year-old Undertaker still
That's one
around.
cool thing I will say about modern wrestling is that, unlike sports, your favorite wrestlers from when you were a kid are either dead or still wrestling. So that's kind of fun. They still bring them back.
I think golf is a little bit like that too. It's like, oh, there's every like Masters Sunday. It's like, oh, there's Fred Couples kicking around, and they cut to him, and he's got like all gray hair, and he's got that same lazy looking swing, and it's like, oh my god, what is he doing still playing? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, golfers just don't go away.
Golf reference,
People
yes.
I love that. The people that were fans of wrestling that dialed this podcast way up were like, what, golf all of a sudden?
Dude, I could talk. I'm talking Bernhard Langer. I'm talking Fred Couples. I'm talking Sevi Ballesteros.
Jeez.
I can go on and on about golf.
Please don't.
My dad watched a ton of golf when I was a kid. I had no choice.
Gotcha.
I had no choice but to like it because my dad loved it.
There you go. My dad didn't watch anything, so. But he was very actually about wrestling. I remember him trying to talk me out of it. He's like, it's fake. That's what he would just say. Like, he would just walk into the room I was watching it, yell, it's fake, and then just leave. It's fake. I know that, Dad.
That sounds like a Mike Judge story.
It's true.
Like something from like King of the Hill or something. It's fake.
It's kind of a funny story because my dad, he was really into football. He didn't watch it on TV, but like he grew up playing football, and he got me into football. And we were the football guys. And then my cousin, who liked wrestling, and his dad were more into wrestling. And I was like talking to my cousin. I was like, my dad actually hates wrestling, and he thinks it's fake. And my cousin was like, well, my dad hates football. And I was like, does he think it's fake? Because that's stupid. And I remember thinking like the only excuse he could have for hating football was that he thought it was fake, just to match my dad's hate of wrestling. And I remember just my whole life thinking, I can't believe that guy thinks football's fake. He never said that. I just baked that into my brain.
You just assumed that.
Yeah. I was like, how can you think that's fake? Watch that. That's so real.
That's tremendous.
Kids are stupid.
Oh, the rationalizations you make just because like you just assume stuff. It's fantastic. I love it.
Pretty ridiculous.
The big thing I got into, and this is funny for a number of reasons. Well, it is to me anyway. The Macho Man, Randy. I guess he was the Macho King.
Oh, really?
Randy Savage at the time. Yeah, he was Macho King at the time. This was 1990. And he was trying to challenge the Ultimate Warrior to a title fight. And meanwhile, Ultimate Warrior was refusing and decided instead to defend against the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase on Saturday night's main event. This would have been in like December 1990 or sometime after Survivor Series. And he kicked the crap out of DiBiase, obviously. And he was getting ready to do the gorilla press finishing move. Here comes, I'm watching this on my dad's, I think my parents were watching Dallas or something like that. I'm not even kidding.
Columbo?
They were watching like Dallas or like Dynasty or some crap like that. I'm watching this in my dad's room on his like tiny black and white TV on like channel 4 or whatever. I'm barely getting the picture in. So it's like super grainy and bleary. Here comes Macho King Randy Savage sprinting to the ring, beating the ever-loving crap out of Ultimate Warrior. Vince McMahon screaming and freaking out on commentary. Here's sensational Queen Sherry is kicking him while he's down, and Warrior can't get up. And then there's like, of course, a wrestling staple, there's like 20 referees in the ring trying to stop Macho Man, and he just climbs the top rope and jumps over all of them and lands I forget if it was the elbow or if he's like landing his king scepter onto the Warrior. I think it was the scepter. I remember he had something in his hands. He like lands on the Warrior with it, and I was just like, oh my god, this guy is crazy. Like, this guy is legitimately crazy. Nobody can stop this guy because he's legitimately crazy.
So that stuck with you.
So I had to keep watching because, like, this guy could do anything he wants because he's crazy. He's a crazy person. Like, nobody can stop him because there's all these people trying to wrangle him up and nobody's stopping him.
Wow.
And he's just like running around, and I'm just like, I was just enchanted. Like, and we ended up getting the Royal Rumble 91 pay-per-view, which came after that, and Macho King came out, what he was known as then.
Right.
Macho King came out after that, smashed the crap out of Warrior with like stuff, with like lights and stuff, like made out to like make the ring look nice or something like that. He like beat the crap out of like the set pieces. And then Sergeant Slaughter ended up beating Warrior for the title. And so that ended up leading to Warrior and Savage in a career-ending match at WrestleMania 7 in 1991. And that's probably my favorite match ever that I've ever seen in my life. I'm biased because I was like not even 9 years old yet when I saw it, but it was like the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I was in awe of the whole thing. It was crazy.
So you either have an incredible memory or you've seen that a lot. Is this one of the things that you recorded and rewatched over and over again?
Oh, the WrestleMania was. No, I wasn't lucky enough to record the Saturday Night's Main Event thing.
Wow. Good memory.
Yeah, but the WrestleMania 7, yeah, no, that tape is worn out. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. I think you mentioned Royal Rumble. I think that's my favorite pay-per-view event. There's just something about like the last man standing thing that always appealed to me. I just love that stuff.
Super fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And even in the game, I would like after I would throw everybody out, I would really fixate on the times and be like, oh, it was about a minute between Undertaker and the other guy. I wonder what I was doing for that whole minute. I need to get my act together.
That was great. What a bonus that was too, to have like the actual eliminations timed. Like that was so unexpected. I was like,
yeah,
whoa,
that was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of even when I was really into WCW and NWO, I would still watch the Royal Rumble. And actually, I think my first memory of The Rock was from the Royal Rumble. He was still Rocky Maivia. He came out and I think he threw Stone Cold out, who had been in there for like 30 minutes or something.
Oh, right on, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
That would have been probably 99, I would think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, 98, 99, something like that. Yeah.
Or 98, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, 90s wrestling. Wow, what a
90s wrestling.
What a thing. So, let's see, we're getting pretty close to where we have to answer some listener questions. Maybe we could do a wrestling part too, but I wanted to pose the question to you, and maybe this sort of will tie up a lot of our 90s likes, dislikes, favorites, memories, that kind of thing. If you could make a 5-man wrestling faction from 90s wrestlers, who would be in the crew? Who's your top 5?
Oh, man. Jeez. Well, one of my favorites was Bret Hart from the get-go. I wasn't a big Hulk Hogan guy, and I wasn't a big Ultimate Warrior guy because they were too... I mean, I just kind of accepted them.
Right. They're just
as
legendary.
Who they were.
Yeah, they're just...
Yeah, they were just like kind of there as like, well, they're forces of nature. There's nothing I can do about them.
That was me. They were just already everyone's favorite, and I wanted somebody a little different.
Exactly. Yeah, I want somebody a little different. And British Bulldog was like that. Bret Hart was like that. Shawn Michaels was like that at first, back when he first broke up with Marty Jannetty back in the infamous Rockers breakup. Austin's got to be in there. I love Steve Austin. Like, I still watch his YouTube videos and stuff, so he's got to be in there. I love The Rock. He's hilarious. It's impossible not to like.
Legend.
Yeah. And Bret Hart's a little polarizing because he's kind of as they say in this business, as Triple H would say, Bret Hart's a bit of a mark for himself, but I still like Bret Hart because he's a big reason why I like wrestling, because he made it. He was such a contrast from Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior. That was such a steep transition, because they gave him the belt after Hogan left in '92.
Yeah,
that was a big deal. I was like, holy crap, this tag team guy is is champion. I was like, I got to check this out. And he's like defending the title against like freaking Virgil, like all these other guys. I'm like, what? So I am biased towards Bret Hart. So Bret, Rock, Austin. I got to go Undertaker, just because he scared the ever-loving crap out of me when I was a kid, when he first came out in 1990.
Even when he was just wearing purple and didn't dye his hair?
Yeah, when he was he had like red hair, and he had like kind of a mullet.
Yeah.
And he's really scary. Like, he was so into his character.
Oh, yeah. He still really is.
And I guess so, yeah. He, my childhood friends saw him and like literally sprinted over to my house just so he could talk about him.
Wow.
Like, when he first saw him on like Wrestling Challenge on like some random Saturday morning or something.
That's awesome.
He just like showed up at my door like minutes after Undertaker showed up. I was like, holy crap. Like, how'd you get... He's like, did you see Undertaker? I was like, yeah. So Undertaker's number 4. Oh, number 5. I'm going to go Owen Hart, number 5, just because I don't think he gets enough love. And I think Owen could do it all. I think he was great in the ring. I thought he was hilarious.
Yeah.
As both intentionally and unintentionally.
I think my issue with Owen was that for me, he was sort of a lifelong heel. And I was always I don't know, what's the opposite of heel? I was always a babyface.
Babyface guy? Yeah. Well, you weren't around for when he was part of High Energy with Coco Beware.
Yeah, I must have missed that one.
They wore the baggy pants. Like 3 of you out there know what I'm talking about. It was a very short-lived tag team.
Yeah, that's a good list. Actually, at the top of my list, also Bret Hart. He was my favorite wrestler as a kid.
Yeah.
And I think
he would have been a very much a WCW guy. He from like the early 90s. He was very much a wrestler's, he was a no nonsense guy.
Yeah. And what do they call him? Like the essence of execution or whatever it was, the
excellence of execution.
Because some of the insider stories was that like he was just so good at his craft. Like if you wrestled Bret Hart, you had nothing to worry about. It was always
everybody really had a ton of respect for the guy. So yeah,
and also superficially, he was just perfectly 90s cool. Like Ultimate Warrior and Hogan were 80s cool, and Bret Hart.
That's right.
He didn't talk a whole lot. He had the sunglasses. He had the guitar squelch coming in. I mean, he was just 90s cool. Yeah, I love
That's an excellent point. Yeah, he had the sunglasses, he had the greasy hair, he had the leather jacket, and the pink and black. That was definitely a 90s vibe for sure.
Absolutely. I think number 2 for me would have to be Rey Mysterio. So fun to watch.
Oh, okay.
So fun to watch that dude.
Yeah, that guy was amazing.
Oh, incredible. And I remember like nearly crying when they were going to try to pull his mask off. I was like, don't do it.
No. When I think it was Chris Jericho that was going to do that?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, his matches with Eddie Guerrero were amazing.
Oh, yeah. Both those guys really talented.
Yeah.
Hacksaw, Jim Duggan. Just love Hacksaw.
He was in the Genesis Royal Rumble game.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And he never really had a ton of beefs. He didn't have a lot of mic time, but just the 2x4 and the yelling nonsense was enough for me, man. Reminded me of my Uncle Randy.
The yelling nonsense is exactly right. It's just him just shouting randomly.
Yeah.
No!
I love it.
Right
Macho Man. You got to put Macho Man up there.
You know what? I totally forgot about Macho Man. Macho Man's like my all-time favorite, and I totally just left him out to dry.
It's hard to pick a top 5.
Yeah, it's top 5s are tough, man.
Yeah.
I'm taking out Owen and putting Macho Man. I'm moving Macho Man straight to the top.
Okay, fair enough.
Because he could do it all. He was a great good guy. He was a great bad guy. He was crazy as hell.
Yeah.
And he was just fun to watch. He was just incredibly eccentric.
Yeah, and he got me hooked on Slim Jims. So have him to blame for my high sodium. And then last for me would be Roddy Piper. Anytime I heard those bagpipes, I'd get excited.
That's a great one.
Just hearing him come out. Yeah. So that's my 5. That'd be a good faction.
That'd be an excellent. I think your faction would beat my faction.
I don't know.
I don't know. Bret Hart versus Bret Hart is tough to divvy up. That'd be a weird one. But
you can do that on the video games.
And Macho Man versus Macho Man. But yeah. No, I'm so disappointed in myself. I forgot about Macho. I was trying to think of everybody else but Macho Man, and I forgot to list him.
That's okay. We got to talk about Owen Hart, which was important.
No, Owen deserves more cred. He really does. That guy's amazing.
Now, to bring it down a little bit, were you watching the pay-per-view where Owen had the incident?
I was not, but my mom woke me up. I was a senior in high school. No, I would have been a junior in high school. It was like, no, I don't know. It would have been May 1999, I think, is when it happened. So I think I would have been out of school, actually. And she woke me up at like 6 a.m., like asking me, do you know who Owen Hart was? I was like, what? Yeah. And she was like, well, he died last night. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? He died last night. She's like, he died in the ring. I was like, holy crap. I ran to the basement we had AOL in those days, and to see what the hell happened. And back then we had here's an interesting tidbit for you. I did not understand the internet, basically. I only understand it AOL. So I only knew of like the WWF AOL site, so to speak. It's kind of like its own proprietary thing.
Okay.
Where you just click on stuff. You just log into AOL and you just click on icons and you just navigate your way through the internet that way. Like there's no typing in URLs, there's no bookmarks or any of that. And I went to the WWF Informer website, which is what I had basically like favorited as my like home site because I was there so often.
Right. And
I saw it like front and center, like Owen Hart like fell on a like failed stunt. I was like, I can't believe It just blew my mind that could happen. It was so freaking, yeah. It was, yeah. My mom, I was that into wrestling that my mom woke me up to.
Yeah, that's crazy. You nailed it too. It was May 23rd of 1999. So
yeah. It was the May, because it wasn't quite WrestleMania. It was like the event after, or like 2 events after. So it was somewhere around there.
Right.
It was tough, man. I remember talking to everybody at school about it the next day, and there was at least a couple other kids there that were kind of like, did that really happen? Like, how did that happen? Like, what the hell? Like, how did they let that happen? That eventually became the conversation, but that's a different thing entirely. Like, how do you let something like that happen?
It's one of those things with wrestling where you never know if it's true or not until your mom and dad are talking about it. It's like, oh, this made your news? Okay.
I think it was on the front page of the paper too. Yeah. I think that's what alerted her to it. Yeah,
because I mean, wrestling stunts happen all the time, things that should make the news shouldn't. Like, there was I remember watching an episode of Nitro where Scott Steiner just kidnaps DDP's wife and leaves, and I'm like, that's probably going to make the news, and it didn't. So I was like, that probably didn't happen. But when Owen Hart had his, when that happened, and I watched that in real time. My dad stole
Holy crap.
Pay-per-view from the cable company. I don't know how he did it, but we got it for free. What are they going to do now?
So you saw that. So you saw the announcers like tell the audience?
The fall, they wasn't shown, obviously.
Yeah.
And the announcers came back pretty forlorn. They were certainly upset, but they moved on pretty quick. And
that's really weird that they did that. Yeah.
But I think there was an element of confusion with them as well. They didn't know, like, they saw him rushed out. Sure. I don't know that they immediately knew he had passed at that point. I don't know if anybody did. Yeah, it was nuts, man.
That's crazy. I think you got to stop the show at that point, but that's just my opinion.
I know. What a machine, though, the entertainment business.
Yeah, just crazy.
Yeah. I'm sure we could talk about wrestling all night long. To the
I certainly could.
Listeners' chagrin, maybe even. But maybe we should move into some listener questions before we get too far ahead of ourselves.
Let's do it.
Okay, the first one here is from Chrono Basher, which sounds like a guy you might like.
Chrono Basher?
Yeah. Or maybe I was going to say maybe he's a basher within Chrono, but maybe you're right. Maybe he hates the game.
Maybe he hates Chrono Trigger.
He could. It could be one of those. What would you suggest for promotion/growth? What did you do that helped your channel grow?
Well, what I did was I was lucky enough, I guess, to discover the Racket Boy community. For those that don't know, Racket Boy is a retro gaming community going back all the way to 99, I think. And
did you have them on your AOL bookmark list too?
I wish. That'd be freaking awesome. No, they've been around forever. So I forget when I found them. I wish I knew. And GameFAQs was another one. And GameFAQs, it's kind of a meme now that GameFAQs is kind of toxic, like talking to anybody there. But when I was posting on their forums, they were pretty cool to me.
Right.
So yeah, GameFAQs and Racket Boy were the two main ones for me, but that's because I was like I was already kind of talking there and interacting with people there and commenting on other people's content there. But yeah, Racket Boy was something I was a part of going all the way back to the early 2000s, mid 2000s. I forget when I had one account, I deleted it, and I started my SNES Drunk account. And that's, I guess, my best advice is to just like ingratiate yourself to is that a word? Ingratiate?
It is right now, and I like it.
Okay, I feel like it is. I don't know if it is. Ingratiate. Yeah, I'm gonna Google that right now. Ingratiate.
Yeah, bring oneself into favor. There you go.
Oh, okay, it is. It didn't feel like a word as I said it. I'm just using context clues at the moment. Like,
DrunkFriend.
DrunkFriend. Okay, ingratiate is a word, but yeah. I ingratiated myself to the Racket Boy community. from like an early, you got to like interact with other people's stuff, basically. Like, you can't just like go to a place and post your link and leave.
Right.
That's stupid. Why? Nobody has any incentive to care about anything you're posting if you're doing that. It's spam.
Yeah.
So you need to be part of the community. You need to ingratiate yourself to a community and be part of it and become part of it. Whether that's a subreddit, whether that's Racket Boy, whether that's GameFAQs, or whatever else you can find. Nintendo Age is another one. I didn't even think of that until it was... I don't think Nintendo Age paid any attention to me, and I didn't really pay any attention to them. But
They do sometimes. It depends. Now Nintendo Age is no longer, which is maybe a good thing. But
yeah, that's kind of weird because they had a great buyer's guide that I like to use.
Well, now it is videogamesage.com.
Oh, okay.
And
That's
everyone moved over there. It was bought out. It was a whole messy thing. It was actually quite a bit of drama that was pretty juicy. I followed it.
super
but,
weird.
all of the good members, and I don't want to offend a lot of people out there, but there were a lot of bad members
Sure.
that probably know who they are. All of the good folk, I think, moved on to Video Game Sage or Video Games Age. I never really clarified, but it's spelled the same with Video Game SAG, whatever.
You can do it however you want. It's there's no way to know.
But yeah, I was going to say, like, it's, and you alluded to this, you have to, in any community that you're a part of, even if you're not sharing anything, you should sell yourself before you sell your stuff. And so it's important to be a presence in a community before you say, hey, check out what I've done. Because like you said, if you just start spamming links everywhere that you think a lot of gamers are, it's not going to be well received. People don't like that. So
You're going to get marked as spam, yeah.
for me, I just copied my favorite channel and just made videos just like theirs. And then that helped the most. Because then they retweeted and stuff like that, and then you end up on a podcast with them. So
right on.
you could follow that blueprint. It's not as common of a road, but that's the one I went down.
By the way, have we said right on enough yet? I think we should both say right on a few more times.
That's right. There was a comment. There was a guy that didn't like it.
Yeah, we need more negative comments so we can dwell on those and make sure to harp on those a bit more. Right on.
Right on. Yeah. And I think, being versatile with where you promote, use Twitter, use Facebook, use Instagram. Don't just hang out in one spot. If something's not working, there's something you need to fix. It could be your content.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about all that.
Yeah. Just make the stuff you want to see. Like, that's kind of what I set out to do is, like, I want to see really short, to the point videos about, games like Sky Blazer or Run Saber or Super Castlevania 4 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that's what I'm going to make. So just make the kind of stuff that you would want to see.
Yeah, and if you're proud of it, that's a good sign.
Yeah. So the next question then comes from, I don't know if that's a lowercase L or an uppercase I. I don't know if that's Ivis M or Elvis M.
Huh. It could be Ivism.
Oh, there we go. Ivism. That would make sense.
I don't know.
They ask, what game are you going back to right now that you played a long time ago while staying and working from home?
Well, I don't replay stuff very often. That's my...
Aw.
I don't. Well, part of it, it's twofold, really. One is that I have a podcast about beating games, and so replaying games kind of doesn't really satisfy that angle. Yeah. And I'm just not a redoer. I don't rewatch shows. I don't, the only thing I'll beat into the ground is music. But when it comes to games and stuff, I don't often revisit it unless it's sports or something that's short, bite-sized. I don't do it often. But I will say, to answer the question, I have been playing a lot of Yakuza 0, and because it was on Game Pass, and it's my first entry into that series, and I think it's amazing. I know that's not retro, but it is so fun.
That game looks incredible. Yeah, I really need to find that. I forget if that's PS4 or not. Is it?
It's on Xbox and PS4. Like I said, it's on Game Pass, so you can play it for free if you have Game Pass.
Right on.
It's incredible. I was so surprised that a lot of people were talking about it. I didn't really know what to expect, and then now that I'm into it, it's easily one of my favorite game narratives. And the gameplay is aight. I'd give that about a 7 or an 8. I don't, I don't know, but the story's so good. So I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, it looks super fun. That's one game series I've always wanted to get into for sure. For me, I'm for some reason going back to one of my favorite games from my, I guess, childhood / adolescence, Blake Stone, Aliens of Gold. I've been playing a ton of this on Steam.
What are you talking about?
It's a first person shooter made. I forget if it came after Doom or before Doom and after Wolfenstein. I forget what it came out in '93. I don't know if that's probably after Doom.
Okay.
But it's a total Doom ripoff. But it's got this like really hilarious, like early '90s sci-fi aesthetic to it. That's incredibly fun and silly. There's all sorts of like goofy monsters and
I see.
fun weapons you can use, and yeah, it's like a typical early 90s first person shooter stuff. And that was what we had when we first bought our computer, or I should say my dad first bought a computer for us, and we got a trial version, I think a shareware version of Blake Stone. We only got the first mission, but the game is supposed to come with 6 missions, or 5, I think. And I've been playing through the rest of the missions.
Oh wow!
And they're long. They're 9 levels long, and these are huge dungeons that, it's typical Doom stuff. You find the key, you navigate the maze, you confront the monster, destroy him with whatever, you manage your health, you manage your ammo, all that sort of stuff, and it's super fun. I really enjoy the hell out of a good Doom engine first person shooter like that. They're just super fun.
I love the cover art.
Oh yeah, of course. It's like something out of like a Dolph Lundgren like crappy sci-fi movie. Like, yeah, sort of a thing.
It's pretty awesome. And I don't recognize the companies that were a part of this. Jam Productions and Apogee Software.
Well, Apogee, I think, has done a few things. Apogee did Rise of the Triad. That was a pretty infamous first-person shooter, too, that came later, where that was one that my brother got later on that blew my freaking mind when I played it. Because instead of a gun in front of you like Doom, you had just your hand, and you were like casting spells and stuff.
Wow, like
it was
Hexen or something.
It was freaking it was awesome. I loved it.
That's cool. Yeah, this year I found an ad that's like the hottest 3D action since Wolfenstein. So that's cool.
There you go.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's my game.
Nice. That's a good pull. What degrees of separation we have between Yakuza 0 and Blake Stone Aliens of Gold. My gosh. Okay, next up, Hypnovike. He sounds like one of your people. What game has aged better than you expected, and what game has aged worse than you expected?
Aged better than I expected. That's a tough one to answer. I will say what game has aged worse than I expected is definitely Star Fox, because that game was incredible when I first played it, and it was one of those like special games that felt like it was made just for me, because it had that like Star Wars type music. You're a spaceship flying around, like you're using your imagination and all that sort of stuff, and it was super exciting and super fun. And you play it now, and it's that, I still think it's good. I'm probably biased when I say that, but it's definitely got its problems with frame rates and that sort of stuff. Aged better than I expected. I guess puzzle games, like single screen puzzle games like Tetris Attack and stuff like that. Because at the time when they come out, you're just kind of like, we've already got Tetris, we've already got Dr. Mario, we've already got all this other stuff. What do we need another puzzle game for? But you go back to it and it's like, whoa, this game is freaking intense and it's super fun. And I guess that would be my answer is puzzle games like Tetris Attack and maybe Wario's Woods and stuff like that.
Okay. I think, yeah, this one's kind of hard to answer. But prior to this episode, I did, quote unquote, smoke the whole pack when it comes to wrestling video games that I own.
Yeah.
I need to refresh for this podcast, see what I got, see if I can remember anything. And so I'm going to just base my answers off wrestling games, Hypnovike. I hope that's okay.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
But game that aged better than I expected, and this is just, it's almost a universal truth in that the 16-bit generation aged so much better than the 64-bit generation. I mean, that's just hands down across the board. People sort of recognize that. But I was impressed with how bad the N64 wrestling games were, because I remember loving them so much. And especially in the time, I remember it just came out on PlayStation, but WCW NWO Thunder. I remember wanting that game so bad when they showed it.
I forgot Thunder wasn't even a thing. That was like their Thursday show, right?
Yeah, it was. Thursday Night Thunder. And that's where I saw the advertisement for it. And among my friends, I was the only one that had a PlayStation. Everyone else had an N64. And when I learned that thing was #1 exclusive to PlayStation, and you could flip everyone's allegiances between NWO and WCW, I almost lost my mind. And I remember begging my parents for this thing. And I was probably 13, 14, but begging them for it. And they called, and they were looking for it. They called Kmart, they called Walmart, they called all the local stores trying to get it. And my dad was supposed to come home with it, and he tricked me in saying like, they didn't have it. But then he pulls it out of his coat pocket, and I flip out and squeal.
My dad did that same thing. It's like out of the dad playbook.
The dads, they're so good. That game aged okay, but a lot of the ones that we played on N64, Revenge and Nitro, just no bueno. Just not unplayable, but
I think Revenge is still good, but Nitro, I get what you're saying, where like Nitro is freaking trash. Like that game is garbage. I think Revenge is still decent.
It's okay. Yeah, like I said, like it's playable, but my memories of it, and you know how memories are.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I was like, wow, we played this with just binging Mountain Dew and Doritos for hours, and I can't tell the difference between any of these guys.
It's definitely still jank, like where you like pick up the stairs and you're like fading in and out of the ring somehow, and it's like, what is even happening right now? Or the way you pick up stuff from outside the ring, and it causes your character to like sort of come off the screen a little bit, or start shaking uncontrollably, or whatever it might happen. I don't know, but yeah.
I was playing that a few minutes ago, actually, Revenge, and it would glitch out, and just both wrestlers in the ring would just ping pong off every turnbuckle until it settled down. So that was fun.
That sounds fun. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was kind of neat. I tried to record it with my phone, but it would stop when I tried. But those didn't age as well as I'd hoped, but I expected that.
There were a bunch of wrestling games that didn't age well. Like Nitro was definitely one of them. What was the other one that was? Oh, Warzone. I was going to say it was a WWF one that for N64, and it had Austin on the cover, and it was called Warzone. That game is terrible. Like just awful. Like I don't know what they were thinking. Like it was even bad back then, but back then it was just like Super WrestleMania. You were just happy to have like the wrestlers' likeness and their music and all that stuff. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, and then better than I expected, I played through a little bit of the Royal Rumble that I have on Super Nintendo and had a blast. So those games still hold up.
What did you think of the roster of that game? With you got Flair. You got Lex Luger as the narcissist, not as Lex Luger. And me and my friend, my childhood friend at the time, we used to name him Ned Flanders.
Really?
For some reason, he didn't have a mustache, but we still named him. We thought he looked like Ned Flanders.
He's a buff Ned Flanders.
Well, that's the gag, isn't it? When Flanders goes to rescue, I forget if it's Homer.
Sexy Flanders. The ski slope.
We thought it was like, that's freaking Flanders. But and then you've got there's no Hogan in the game, which is very strange, but you still got Macho Man. You still got Undertaker, Perfect, Hitman,
Tatanka.
Shawn Michaels, Tatanka, Crush, Razor Ramon.
The version I actually grew up with was the Genesis version.
Yeah, that one's got Hogan.
That had Hogan, but it also had Urban R. Shyster, IRS man.
Great name.
And the guy, it had Papa Shango in it, which...
Oh, yeah.
Wow, what a pull. Even for the day.
Scary.
Yeah.
He really scared the hell out of me. They were really pushing him big time back when that game came out, so it doesn't surprise me that he was in there because I think they wanted to have sort of like a supernatural opponent for the Undertaker.
Yeah, that makes
or something
sense.
like that.
He
Because
also had Jim Duggan.
oh yeah, of course, yeah. And you could do his finisher with where he gets down in the 3-point stance
Yeah,
and tackle the guy.
it's kind of like a Goldberg move, isn't it? Yeah, I guess they kind of rip each other
It
off.
was pre-Goldberg move, yeah.
Man, good times. I'm probably going to get off here and go play more wrestling games when this is all done.
I'm gonna play some Royal Rumble.
It's solid. I need to also get Raw. I wanted to play that, but I didn't have it, unfortunately.
Ugh. You got to get it.
All right, so does that do it for a Drunk Friend episode?
No, I haven't said right on enough.
Right on. Oh, that guy's going to be so excited to hear this.
I know, right? I hope so. This is for you, buddy.
Yeah, so that's been another Drunk Friend podcast. Be sure to check out polykill.com to find more podcasts like this one. And once again, reach out to us at drunkfriendpodcast@gmail.com if you would like us to stop saying things like right on.
We need more negative feedback. Come on, people.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We're getting by too easy.
And if you'd simply like to just help out the show, remember to rate and review us wherever you listen, whether it's like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of that stuff.
So many of them. We're on Twitter as well. I'm at Trav Plays Games, and Alex is, of course, at SNESDrunk.
And, of course, we want to give a shout-out to Coolor for the podcast music. The song you heard is called Electric Star Bounce, and you can find a link to more of his music on the Buzzsprout podcast page.
Speaking of buzzed, be sure to catch us on YouTube, and thanks for listening.
And we hope you have a great rest of your day.